Alrightus, welcome back to another thrilling installment of Mecha Mondays. I'm your intrepid narrator, Pilot Fraggeth, and today we're going to be reading more of Battletech's Lethal Heritage novel by Michael A. Stackpole. Previously on... One sec here. We were introduced to... Yep, there goes the cover. We were introduced to the Space Yakuza, and the character of... What's his name? I don't remember, because we've only seen him once. Here we go. Shin Yodama. And he is a Space Yakuza. He is in... Where is he at? The Draconis Combine? He's in the Draconis Combine, and he's met his new Oyabun, who is going to be telling him what to do, but apparently Shin Yodama is a pretty serious... He's a pretty big deal. He's apparently very good at what he does. Killing is his business, and business, as they say, is good. He is competent. Mostly we're just going to be introduced to competent hero characters. We also have Kai, whatever his last name is, Allard. Kai Allard puts his father's mech that has been given to him, which is the Yen-Lo Wang, through its paces. And he's pretty good, but he's never good enough for himself. He has self-loathing issues. And we also... Phelan Kell has an interesting altercation, that doesn't end well for Phelan Kell. Phelan? I'm not actually sure how it's pronounced. I've been saying it Phelan because that sounds appropriately edgy. But P-H-E-L-A-N, Phelan. I'm winging it. My Battletech lore knowledge is not minuscule, but it is not monolithic either. I've seen the name, I've just never consciously heard it pronounced. Anyway, he has an altercation while he's looking for, I don't know, some space pirates or something. He's bullying some space pirates with his squad, and Lance, whatever we call them now. Bandits. He's bullying bandits for money in mechs. And the bandits are on the run from a number of not readily identifiable mechs, who just kick the bejesus out of them and then proceed to kick the bejesus out of Phelan and his friends, well, comrades, from ranges outside of what is considered normal. And they're faster, they're better armed. One looks like a Marauder if it performed unspeakable acts of mechanical reproduction with a catapult. In this case, the Marauder mech and the Catapult mech, respectively. The Marauder being the, what's it called? From Macross, the Glaug. Or if you've watched Robotech, the Zentradi Officer Pod. That's about what you're looking at when you, that's about what you're doing. That's the same silhouette profile, more or less. It's changed a bit. They've changed it a bit now. The new redesigns are a bit more... Still basically have the same general silhouette and profile, though. I give credit where it's due, now that they're allowed to be seen again. They've done pretty well on that. The Catapult is its own thing. It's a chicken walker. It typically has two big boxes on its shoulders in lieu of hands or arms. Usually those boxes are filled with many missiles. Although there is at least one variant that has energy hardpoints, and so usually you'll see a PPC, which is a something particle cannon. It's a particle cannon. Shoots a plasma bolt or energy bolt at long range. There's at least one variant that does that. I don't actually know if there's a
ballistics hardpoint variant? There probably is. Generally, a catapult will have some spots on its side torsos for energy weapons or machine guns sometimes. Machine guns being actually in the tabletop, machine guns are pretty serious. In the Mech Warrior games, they're generally a joke. The reason they're relevant in the tabletop is they are very good at getting internal component crits. They're very good at that. Lots of projectiles, also generally lightweight. So there's something to be said for them there. Um, in Mech Warrior, it's a little less generally, or depending on the Mech Warrior game, obviously. I think there's, I want to say in Mech Warrior Living Legends, there was something that had like a lot of ballistic slots that you couldn't realistically fill with anything other than a lot of machine guns, but I can't remember what mech or variant it was. I think it was a light. Doesn't matter now. Minutia, doesn't matter. Anyway, we've gotten through the first major chunk of the book. So now we are on to book 2, as it is called. It is not the second book. There is a second book and a third book. I can't remember their names offhand. I just saw them too, which is embarrassing. I'm not going to look it up. That are part of the Blood of Kerensky trilogy, which is the Michael A. Stackpole stuff that's really serving as part of FASA. At that time, it was FASA. I forget who owns them now. Their big media push for the clan invasion that they were doing to shake things up on the tabletop. Anyway, let's get reading. Oh, good. We are going to have interactions with clanners. This is a good thing. And a new character, because why wouldn't we? More voices for me to forget to use. Okay, well, let's see how long chapter 14 is. Maybe I'll read a little longer than I was otherwise going to do. So I've commented on this before. One of the things that's kind of interesting about this book is the text is small and dense. So page numbers, my general estimation is like 50 pages is about what I'll do for a given reading, and that'll be about 2 hours, give or take. This winds up skewing that a smidge. Anyway, let's get reading. Book 2, Claws of the Beast. Chapter 9. Comstar First Circuit Compound, Hilton Head Island, North America, Terra. 15 September 3049. Mindo Waterley, Primus of Comstar, extended a hand to her visitor.
"The peace of Blake be with you, Precentor Marshal."
The tall man genuflected with the same crisp motion he might have used to salute another warrior. Then he took her hand, allowing her fingers to curl over his index finger, and raised her hand to his lips. "Thank you, Primus," he said, straightening up, "and with you as well." The ramrod straightness of his stance made her marvel at his body's power despite age and the traumas inflicted in a long career. The black thong of his eye patch circled his head, holding his flowing white hair in check and covering the empty socket of his right eye. The crow's feet radiating from his left eye might have hinted at his age, but the sense of inner peace Mindo read in his stance contradicted it.
"I fear my time as Primus has not allowed me to age as well as you."
A soul-sucking weariness seemed to fill her bones with lead and make her feel as though each breath were drawn from a vacuum.
Your calm is your power. Is this something the years in that Combine monastery granted you, or did you pick it up during your training in the ways of Comstar?
Whether they cover this or not, I'll interject here. Comstar is evil space AT&T. And they pretty much run everything behind the scenes. If you're familiar with the moderately deep lore of the early mid Universal Century Gundam setting, um, think of them as kind of like a much more powerful Anaheim Electronics. They basically are running the show. Think the Illuminati, but like with an official face of they control all communications through space. I don't remember how relevant that will be in this series, but there are events later in the universe where it is very important and things go down. Mindo forced herself to smile as she slipped her right hand into her left sleeve.
Before we begin, I wish to congratulate you.
The Precentor Marshal looked confused. Congratulate me?
Today you are 78 years old. That is quite an achievement, Anastasius Vogt.
Vogt folded his arms across his chest as though warding off a chill. I suppose it is. My birthday, that is. That is so much a part of my old life, though, that I hardly consider it. Really, I mark my life as starting with my conversion. A smile caught at the corners of his mouth. That makes me less than a quarter of my chronological age. Hiding her envy behind a mask of friendly pleasure, the Primus said,
Then you are truly blessed with the peace of Blake.
um, I will find some other time to talk about the word of Blake. I'm not doing it now. That's a can of worms. The Precentor Marshal acknowledged her kind words with a courteous bow, but his grin faded. I came as soon as my staff and I had completed our preliminary study of the material you sent. The suborbital plane had to change its re-entry vector to get around some bad weather in the Gulf, or I would have been here sooner.
Did you find the material as disturbing as I did?
Yes, Primus, perhaps even more so. I found the reports of fighting in the periphery curious. Mindo arched a brow.
Obviously, if I had not found the messages entrusted to our center at Vertandi unusual, I would not have sent copies down to you and then summoned you away from the training exercises in Azania. My concern was due to the Kell hounds spending so much of their own money to transmit a message to their home base.
Um, the reason they know that is because they're Comstar and they would have been the ones transmitting that message. Vogt opened his hands. Battling in the periphery, especially in the area of the Oberon Confederation, is not at all remarkable. The warring bands of pirates out there generally let people know when they've stomped on a rival or sent a mercenary unit home with a bloodied nose. Granted, their reports seldom check out in terms of casualties or mechs lost for either side, but the outcome of the battle is seldom in error because the losers cannot afford to advertise their weakness. The Precentor Marshal began to pace, his white robe gathering and clutching at his long legs as he moved back and forth. In this case, we've not heard from Kenny Ryan, which means he did not win this contest with the Kell hounds. Nothing short of his death would prevent him from bragging about a victory. The Kell hounds themselves have acknowledged defeat, but deny it came at the hands of Ryan's band. That rings true, despite the fact that the hounds only sent out a company to chase the pirates. Even without Morgan Kell, his nephew Christian, Dan Allard, or Akira Bray leading them, the hounds would have been more than a match for that lot of bandits. Mindo found herself becoming irritated.
Your analysis eliminates some of the more obvious answers to the mystery, Precentor. Could it be that Captain Wilson lied in her report to cover Phelan Kell's death? Certainly, the death of his son would make Morgan Kell very angry. Folkt's left eye narrowed as if summoning up an ancient memory.
That is true, and an angry Morgan Kell is not someone I would want to deal with, no matter what the circumstances. I would accept your explanation had the battle recorder data not been appended to the message they asked us to send.
Mindo shook her head, then hooked a lock of hair back behind her left ear. Not being a mech warrior, perhaps I don't understand the significance you attach to that information.
Folkt smiled indulgently. Aside from the data being unique, the fact that it was broadcast is remarkable. Each mech has a battle recorder that keeps track of everything from sensor inputs to complete diagnostics record for the mech. After a battle, providing the recorder remains intact, the action may be reviewed. When plugged into a simulator, for example, pilots can see exactly what happened in the battle, including all their monitors and instruments.
The Pre-Center Marshal pressed his hands together.
Kell's broadcast was a desperate move, because sending the data out on such a wide beam meant his enemies as well as his friends could get it. Granted, the transmission quality was bad, but that is more due to the electromagnetic properties of Sisyphus's lament than any problem with the equipment at that point.
Something dreadful tugged at the corners of her consciousness, but the Primus could not identify it. So, Morgan Kell's whelp doesn't have his father's nerves of steel and panicked.
Folkt raised a hand to stop her. Phelan may not be his father, but that battle tape shows no lack of nerve. He identified the forces he faced as unusual in the extreme and realized he would not escape that encounter. His broadcast was a message from the dead, a warning to those who survived.
The Pre-Center Marshal clapped his hands once.
Computer, project the holographic reconstruction of the primary battle mech from the Kell tape, clarified and at 1/10 scale.
In silent compliance, the computer materialized a holographic image of the Catapult/Marauder bastard that had broken the Locust and destroyed Phelan Kell's wolfhound. Even at only a meter in height, the machine's image retained all its menace. It feels so malevolent.
Let me switch covers real quick so you see the goofery that we're talking about. I've got a... Here we go. There we go. Much better. That is a Timberwolf. I mean MADCAT. I mean, whatever we're calling it at this point.
It feels so malevolent. A shiver ran down Mindo's spine, and she fought to keep revulsion from her face. The Pre-Center Marshal, however, was not looking in her direction. He slowly circled the projection like a wolf stalking prey, his gaze flicking from point to point, seeking out flaws in the design. When he found none, a smile crept onto his lips, and he nodded with admiration and respect.
Primus, I have taken to calling this model the MADCAT. As with the Catapult mech, the machine boasts two long-range missile pods, one on each side of the forward-thrust torso. It walks on bird's legs, which gives it a hopping, bobbing gait, though this pilot seems to have been able to conquer that tendency. Quite an achievement, with the low gravity on the asteroid. In addition to the standard Catapult features, two Marauder-type weapons pods have been added. They have large lasers over medium lasers. Two more medium lasers, one on each side of the torso, and two machine guns mounted in the center torso round out the weapon selection. Yes, a most impressive machine.
Indeed, with an army of such mechs, we could make Blake's dream of a united humanity a reality in short order. Mindo stared through the image at Folkt. I shall order our armorers to modify our existing catapults to this configuration. Anger creased the Pre-Center Marshal's brow for an instant, then disappeared as if banished by the force of his will.
I am afraid that is not possible, Primus. As you saw in the battle tape, Phelan Kell attacked the machine but failed to damage it. Were we to create a mech with such an array of weapons, we would be unable to armor it sufficiently. On the other hand, if we gave it the armor it needed, the mech would be unable to move because of the current power-to-weight ratios available in our fusion engines. In short, either this mech has incredibly light but durable armor, or it has a power plant of a design surpassing anything we have to offer.
Mindo's mouth went sour. New technology in the hands of someone other than Comstar. That's terrible.
Folkt's grim nod echoed her concern. It gets worse. The ranges at which these new mechs were able to hit their targets is 300 to 400% better than what our current targeting and delivery system allows. It also appears that their heat compensators are much better, or else their pilots can tolerate higher levels of heat because the rate of fire shown would have virtually fried any mech known in the successor states. That is a long sentence. Or it felt like a long sentence. Mindo chewed her. It would have virtually fried any mech known in the successor states. Mindo chewed her lower lip to stop it from trembling.
Explanation?
Precenter Marshall shrugged. The Precenter Marshal shrugged. Their mechs show evidence of technology beyond what we know. My advisors and I wrestled with the question of where these mechs might originate and who piloted them right up until the time I left to join you here.
The Primus's dark eyes half closed. Are they Kerensky's army come back to haunt us?
The Precenter Marshal took a deep breath before answering. That was one of the more popular theories we came up with, but some of the surface evidence seems against it. These mechs' designs are alien to those the Star League army had when it abandoned the inner sphere 300 years ago. When Kerensky's people left, they took with them support personnel, but no research scientists and no manufacturing facilities.
As nearly as we know, Preceptor Marshal, with the slaughter of the intelligentsia that preceded the First Succession War, we cannot be certain who died that way and who had vanished beforehand.
Vogt bowed his head to his mistress. That's with a capital M, that mistress. Ow, ow! Your point is valid, Primus. There are other reasons, however, and they also cast doubt on the Kerensky solution. For example, the paint scheme on the mystery machines is unlike that of any known Star League unit. More important, the most thorough scouting missions carried out on Kerensky's trail lost track of him over 130 light years beyond the periphery borders. General Kerensky and his people are long gone from here.
Mindo's head came up. Surely you cannot dismiss the return of Kerensky's people that easily.
Vogt shook his head. If I gave you the impression that we had easily ruled out the return of the Star League Defense Forces, I apologize. No, we considered it long and hard before setting it aside. Still, Primus, you should understand that the return is a boogeyman used to explain every unusual group that shows up in the successor states. Wolf's Dragoons, for example, are the latest in a long line of groups tagged as having come from Kerensky, the Black Widow's surname adding much fuel to that fire. Even so, even if it were true, the Dragoons, and all the other groups before them, have only had mechs with designs and features that date from the time of the Star League. Again, we have no evidence that Kerensky's people had the information or the means to produce these new mechs.
I see.
Mindo clasped her hands together, holding them at her waist in a pose of forced calm.
What, then, is the explanation you favor?
Sorry.
What, then, is the explanation you favor?
The Precenter Marshal hesitated for a moment. Most of the explanations were mundane and ranged from a periphery pirate band running across a hidden Star League vintage research station to a variation on any of 100 lost colony tales. Still, none of them possessed technology beyond that of the Star League era. We need more evidence before verifying any such conclusions, but I believe we must not rule out the possibility that these are non-humans.
That's impossible.
Mindo's mind reeled at the thought of another sentient race because it pounded away at the foundation of her reality. She had been taught that mankind was the pinnacle of evolution and was meant to rule the stars. Comstar, of course, would lead mankind to the fulfillment of its destiny. Her thoughts insisted that there could be no other sentience in the universe, but if there were, they would have to be destroyed. Mindo glared at Vogt.
Why would another species use mechs so similar to ours?
The Pre-Center Marshal's quick smile unsettled her. It is as simple as it is horrifying, Primus. This is a race that has mastered the ultimate evolutionary tool, conscious genetic manipulation. They adapt quickly and efficiently. They mold themselves to their environment, and then, like any sentient species, they manipulate the environment to broaden the niche they have chosen.
That doesn't in any way answer her question, but all right. Before she could voice an objection, Vogt continued his explanation. Recall, if you will, the Protonaria from the Davion world of Gambia. Those multi-celled creatures, those multi-celled creatures ingest and co-opt genetic material from their meals. In this way, when food is scarce, they eat plants and develop chloroplasts so that they can produce their own food. When Gambia's orbit places that dust cloud between it and the sun, the Protonaria live off the scavenger bacteria that live off the dying plants. If you remember, Protonaria were in great demand as a novelty item 40 years ago. People would raise them in an aquarium and feed them virus-laden solutions. The different viruses would contain the genes for coloration, including luciferase, so a tank of Protonaria would be a multicolored, swirling mass that could even glow in the dark.
Mindo's anxiety locked a frown onto her features.
Those are simple creatures, Pre-Centaur. Protonaria could hardly pilot mechs.
Vogt's quick nod marked his agreement with her. Imagine a higher creature, Primus, one capable of more complex genetic assimilation. It would only need to obtain human genetic material to be able to assume our form. If it could consciously manipulate its development, it could even begin to maximize its new potential.
Mindo shuddered. How would it get Blake's blood? Kerensky!
The Pre-Center Marshal nodded sadly, mourning the demise of a superior military mind.
As wild as it seems, we cannot discount the possibility that somewhere out there Kerensky and his people settled on a world that harbored these things, and that it spelled the end for them. As we've not heard from Kerensky or his people, this could easily explain what happened to them.
It could if it didn't make like 6 billion leaps of logic, but it's okay. We'll roll with it for now. His expression grew pained, and his good eye focused distantly.
The assault could have come in any of a million different ways. To my mind, the most gruesome comes as a perversion of everything we hold dear. Imagine one of these creatures digging down into a grave and consuming just a piece of a dead body. Within a week or a month or a year, however long it took, the creature would become the person whose DNA it ingested.
Man, this guy should start writing sci-fi novels, I'm telling you. Mindo's hands fell to her sides and clenched into fists.
The creatures would have been welcomed by the kin that had been left behind. Even if they remembered nothing of their former lives, their appearance would have been marked as a miracle.
Worse yet, the Pre-Center Marshal told her, they appear as children and are adopted into families. Just like humans, they are educated and acculturated. Because of their ability to adapt, they have an enhanced survival rate. Because they can adapt to the heat of mechs and manipulate their genetic code to make them better pilots, they quickly move into the armed forces, and at some point they go to war with humanity.
He pointed to the MADCAT mech image.
They make technological breakthroughs that increase engine power while decreasing its size. They modify weapon systems to make their machines superior, and they destroy Kerensky's people in a world-by-world campaign that borders on genocide.
Why would they come here? Mindo demanded. Why would they backtrack Kerensky here?
Vogt shrugged.
Many reasons are possible, but two suggest themselves right off. In doing what they have done, they have become human. They are coming here because we have the planets best suited to human life, and we have everything that makes up human culture.
Mindo's expression eased as she realized a portion of the Precentor's argument.
You're saying that while they are likely to be bigger, faster, and stronger than us, they will be socially immature?
Vogt winced.
That's too broad a generalization, I think. Coming from a society of warriors, they are likely to be aggressive and militaristic, which is reason enough to respect and fear them. Though discipline bordering on the Draconis Combine's code of Bushido is very likely, I would also guess that braggadocio, carousing, and gambling will also be seen as nearly sacred. Honor will be everything, which means they will be unprepared for guile and subterfuge.
Mindo exhaled slowly, trying in vain to release the tension in her body. We must determine what they want and assess their ability to attain it.
Vogt looked up. I am prepared to head out at any time, Primus.
No, you are too valuable to Comstar.
I beg to differ, Primus.
The Precentor Marshal smiled warily.
My junior officers are more than capable of handling the training and drilling of our forces. I would also suggest, if this wildest of explanations is correct, that sending Comstar's highest military official as your representative to them would be seen as an overwhelming sign of respect. It could open them up to allow us to influence them. If the truth is more plain, I would assume a liaison with Comstar would not be unwelcome.
Mindo hesitated, then nodded. Very well. You will leave for the periphery immediately. The Precentor Marshal turned to depart, but Mindo stopped him. Precentor, you said there were two possible reasons why the aliens would be coming to the successor states, but you stated only one. What is the second? She saw the ripple of revulsion shoot through Vogt's body as he faced around again.
It's the same reason the Kell hounds never found the bodies of Phelan Kell or the Ryan pirates.
He swallowed hard.
To maximize their potential, the aliens need more raw material. They are coming here to harvest mankind.
It occurs to me I should probably at some point do a brief history lesson on the Kerensky thing. Um, I don't have to do it now, but basically this guy Kerensky, Alexander Kerensky, Alexander, or is that his kid? I get some of the Kerenskys confused. There's a lot of them. There are a lot of Kerenskys. Um, I believe it's Alexander Kerensky, and this is a couple hundred years ago from the setting. Um, so there used to be a political entity called the Star League. So this is before the Inner Sphere happens, and you basically have a whole bunch of different nation states. And the Star League is basically the unified human empire, for lack of a better term. Comstar is around at this point in some form or other. But basically, there's a king who gets killed, or the leader gets killed, and I can't remember his name off the top of my head. I'd have to look it up. And it like the originating conditions for what the inner sphere is like now, with all these different fiefdoms and whatnot, um, that are constantly at war with each other and regressing slowly but steadily into neo-feudalism, um, are becoming apparent. And Alexander Kerensky is like, no, I'm not doing that. Um, I'm going to take basically all the best and the brightest that will come with me as the head honcho of the military of the Star League, and we're going to peace out. We're just going to leave. Um, People suggest to him, hey, you should kill the current usurper leader king person, and then you will be that, and you can guide the Star League to back onto the right course. And he's like, no, that would make me just as bad as that guy. And absolute power corrupts absolutely, and I'm not having it. So basically, he says, peace, I'm dipping, and he takes a huge number of all the best and brightest people that are in the military structure of the Star League, and some scientists, as I recall, along with him, and they leave the known galaxy to set up shop somewhere else. So that's what he's referring to. That's an aggressively reductionary version of what that's all about. Um, I've probably gotten some of the basics wrong, but it's okay because it's been a minute. I'm not up to date on my my Battletech lore at the moment. Not in a great. My brain isn't here. But anyway, that's uh, that's the gist. Chapter 10. Dropship Devil's Island. Location unknown. Date unknown. Phelan Kell struggled impotently against the two men forcing him down into the chair. Where the hell did they get these guys? Though he'd never considered himself especially large or strong, he'd not been manhandled so easily since his childhood. Try as he might to twist his wrists free of his captor's grasp, he could not. They almost seem happy that I'm struggling. I'm giving them something against which to measure themselves. His captors shoved him roughly down into the high-backed metal chair. They snapped cuffs over his forearms to hold his hands in place, then strapped his upper arms down and bound his legs. Both men moved with the efficiency of medtechs securing a patient, then stood and withdrew behind him, shutting the door as they left. Phelan decided against testing his bonds. These synthetic straps'll give but won't break, and I can't do anything about the metal wrist cuffs anyway. No sense in wasting the energy. He quickly took stock of the featureless room. Roughly 3 meters by 3 meters, the room and the chair bolted to the floor had been painted in a flat gray. Recessed overhead lights glowed softly and allowed Phelan just enough light to see his reflection in the room's only true feature. He sat facing a mirrored panel that made up the middle of the wall. Phelan chuckled to himself. Same color scheme as my cell in the hallway between here and there. The guys who run this home for wayward mech warriors have no imagination. Still, it is nice to be free of that cell. If I have to spend another month talking to myself, I'll go crazy. He glanced down at his right wrist. A bracelet woven from synthetic white cord encircled his wrist. The soft material did not irritate his skin, nor was it tight enough to cause him any physical discomfort, but he disliked it nonetheless. An ID tag or electronic locator I could understand, but a piece of rope? There's something unusual going on here, and I definitely don't like it. Static crackled through a speaker hidden in the ceiling. Let the record show that this is the first interview with prisoner 150949L. The subject is male and appears to have recovered from the minor injuries sustained during his capture. Phelan felt a shiver run down his spine as the voice described him in a detached, clinical way. Injuries? He felt a twinge of pain back between his shoulder blades, but he ignored it as old anger resurfaced. I know I must have suffered a concussion because I can't remember anything after I hit Grinner's ejection button. Everything is a blank, including whatever hurt me. A harsh white spotlight flashed on and stabbed its beam down from over Phelan's head. A male voice clipped numbers and words off like an automaton. 150949L, state your name. The voice hesitated, then repeated the request. 150949L, state your name. Though it delivered the words in the rapid-fire pattern of before, the tone had shifted almost imperceptibly from neutrality to a growing hostility. Phelan stared directly into the reflection of his own eyes. Phelan Patrick Kell. An edge entered the voice. Deception will not help you. Phelan sat back against the chair, but tipped his head forward to shade his eyes. He already felt heat from the light collecting in his mop of black hair. I am Phelan Patrick Kell. Very well. The tone implied that he was still lying, and suggested dire consequences would result, but it moved on. Where is your codex? Phelan blinked at his own reflection. My codex? Where is your codex? The young mercenary frowned. Explain what a codex is. Deception will not help you. We will go on with this until we are satisfied. Phelan forced himself to unknot his hands. I don't know what you are talking about. Who is your father? Phelan's expression eased.
Colonel Morgan Kell, Morgan Finn Kell.
Who is your mother?
Salome Ward Kell.
The inflection change in the voice surprised Phelan, almost as much as his answer seemed to surprise the questioner. Deception will not help you. Who is your mother?
Salome Ward Kell.
Another voice, clearly male, came through the speaker.
Does your mother claim I'm Captain Michael Ward of the Star League Defense Forces?
The second voice gave off more feeling, and Phelan almost instantly felt a desire to please that person with his answer.
Easy, Phelan. Be careful. This is the standard good guy, bad guy interrogation technique.
He stared forward at the glass.
Yes, on both sides of the family. Her father and mother were distant cousins.
The harsh voice snapped a quick question. What does the name Jal mean to you? The irritation in the harsh voice infected Phelan.
How the hell should I know?
Even as he snarled his answer, something nibbled at the back of his mind.
Wait,
Jal was Michael Ward's son. Someone said he took off with General Kerensky in his father's place.
Okay, it's not a couple hundred years ago.
It's some amount of time after that happened. I thought it was longer. It's been a while. Curiosity seemed to fill the pleasant voice's next question. Are you sure of this? I don't know what I should be doing with him. Phelan shrugged as much as the restraints would allow.
As sure as I can be of ancient family history. We have it all written down somewhere, so I never bothered to memorize it.
The harsh voice returned. Where is your codex? Phelan ground his teeth.
What is a codex?
Neither voice answered his question. The speaker went dead, and for a second the irrational fear that he had been abandoned shot through Phelan like a laser bolt.
Get a grip. You've been in solitary confinement for so long that any contact seems like a godsend.
He looked up at his own reflection.
Those questions and answers could have been programmed into a computer easily.
Phelan grinned to himself and chuckled lightly.
Hell, you were only 12 when you cobbled together that sound-activated synthesizer. When your mother opened the door to your room to check on you at night and the hinges squeaked, the synthesizer made those sleepy sounds and snores that convinced her you were asleep. At least, it fooled her for a week while you learned how to play poker in the bachelor officers' quarters.
He glanced at the silvery mirror again. Nothing in those voices or words that proves them to be human-generated, especially the harsh one. If that is a human voice, its owner has a serious attitude problem. The pleasant voice again crackled through the hidden speaker. Please forgive the delay. I would like to keep this initial debriefing friendly. Do you think this is possible?
Sure.
Excellent. Phelan heard some clicking come over the speaker. The sound of fingers on a keyboard? Before the next question. You are certain you have no knowledge of a codex? Phelan shook his head.
It doesn't manipulate a hologram for me. I've no recollection of ever having heard of it at all.
A codex is a readout of your genetic pattern. It is quite important. Phelan chewed his lower lip.
I still don't know what a codex is, but I have some genotyping. I mean, everyone in the mercenary company has. We use it for identifying people in the event of a death. That's all kept back with headquarters.
Interesting. The voice seemed grateful for Phelan's frank answer. You mentioned being a member of a mercenary company. What is it? Phelan rocked back in the chair.
The Kell Hounds.
How odd. Everyone knows about the Kell Hounds.
I serve in the 2nd Regiment.
Shocked disbelief flowed through the pleasant voice. 2 regiments? This mercenary band has 2 regiments? Unfocused dread gnawed at Phelan's guts. He sounds surprised and unsettled by that news, but the Hounds have had a 2nd regiment for the last 9 years. When Katrina Steiner died, her will pledged enough money to raise another regiment for the Hounds. The original bequest left to my father and his brother by Arthur Louvon, Katrina's husband, was how they formed the original Kell Hounds. Katrina's money doubled the Hounds' size and gave us far more financial freedom than we'd known before.
He looked up at the mirror and forced himself to keep his expression as relaxed and friendly as appropriate under the circumstances. Behind his eyes, though, his mind had already dropped filters in place to keep from spilling damaging data until he could assess the threat his captors posed. Phelan had assumed, when taken and imprisoned, that he was a captive within an internecine periphery war. He was not so sure now. The pleasant voice had regained its composure. "You said you served with a mercenary band with 2 regiments. Are those battle-mech regiments?" Phelan nodded earnestly, ignoring the cold sweat running down his spine. "Yes, I know that makes us one of the smaller merc units, but we try to make up in quality what we lack in quantity." His heart pounded in his ears as he waited to see what effect his lie had on his interrogator. "And these units are truly that? Mercenary? They have no allegiance to a lord?" Doubt had bled out of the voice, but an urgency seeped in to replace it, along with something else. "Careful, Phelan. There's a lot riding on this answer." The young mercenary swallowed hard. "As mercenaries, their loyalty is to their employer first. But," he rushed to add, "many mercenaries will not accept offers from nobles they consider unscrupulous. Many don't like doing crowd control or acting as a police force either. Mercenaries fight wars, and that's it." The harsh voice returned, full of triumph. "But was not your pursuit of the pirates a police action?" The condescending tone of the question stung Phelan. "You ask that as if pursuing bandits is somehow less than honorable. If it is, why were you out there?" Phelan snorted derisively. "At least my companion and I were evenly matched against our enemies. It would have been a fair fight without your interference." The mirror shook as something hit it from the other side with a muffled thump. Phelan brought his head up and smiled broadly at his unseen interrogators. "If they reacted so well to that small a verbal jab, wait until I really stick it to 'em." The pleasant voice resumed the questioning, but the lighter tone of the queries told Phelan he'd won some respect by nettling the owner of the harsh voice. Though the harsh voice did not return as the session wore on, Phelan realized from the way some of the questions were phrased that Hothead, as Phelan mentally tagged him, was still in the room and listening. Phelan's defenses came up whenever he heard a hostile question, which happened often enough to make him give away very little information. The middle-aged man leaned against his high-backed chair. His left elbow rested on the chair's arm, his left hand stroking his white mustache and goatee. As his blue eyes followed the lines of text flowing up over his data terminal, the monitor's amber glow brought golden highlights to his short, white hair. As the information ended, he tapped a key with his right hand and shut the terminal down. He looked up, causing the room's only other occupant to pull himself to full attention. With a slight wave of his right hand, the older man allowed the other to relax. "This is most interesting, Star Commander. Most of the intelligence our people have gathered from the periphery's inhabitants has been exaggerated nonsense based on centuries-old rumors, wishful thinking, and nightmares. This Phelan Kell, on the other hand, has knowledge and is intelligent enough to conceal it." The Star Commander nodded in agreement. In the room's muted light, his dark gray uniform appeared black, and the small red stars on his collar remained hidden until light flashed scarlet from them. "I agree, my Khan. The physicians who repaired the damage done to him estimate his age to be between 18 and 23 years old, confirming his statement that he is 18. As we saw in the battle tapes of the engagement where we captured him, he handles a mech with some skill." The older man nodded sagely, his left hand rising to toy with his goatee. "What do you make of his name being the same as that of the mercenary unit? Is he an orphan they adopted?" The Star Commander shrugged. "Neg, my Khan. It would be impossible for an adoptee to earn a name so quickly, Quineg. It would seem to me that he is related to the family that owns the unit. I could further suppose that he is in some disfavor because he was given service in the periphery. Perhaps, as we have done, the Kell hounds placed a training cadre out hunting vermin." Possible, Star Commander, very possible. The older man smiled. Do not reprimand either Vlad or Karu for their performance in the interrogation. Vlad's outbursts were unfortunate, but he has given this felon a focus for his own anger. Vlad will continue to be part of the inquiry team for this subject. Karu's surprise concerning the mercenaries caused Kell to be cautious, which tells us he has information he thinks is important. That, too, is valuable.
Do they continue to question him as is?
The old man paused for a moment, then nodded slowly. Af, let them work unaided for the next month. By the time the dropship Orion returns here, the interrogators will have collected enough data to alert us to areas where he has information he does not want to give up. At that time, with more experienced people, we will do what we must to learn all that Phelan Kell can tell us.
Chapter 11. 12th Donegal Guards Headquarters, Trell 1, Tamar March, Lyran Commonwealth, 19 October 3049. Commandant Victor Steiner Davion adjusted the picture of his family on the corner of his desk. Taken about a year and a half before he left the New Avalon Military Academy to return to the Nagelring, it represented the last time the whole family had been together. Victor, his father, and his hulking brother Peter stood in the back row. His mother sat in front of Hans, with Catherine on her right, Arthur on her left, and little Yvonne sitting at her feet. Victor centered the portrait between his data monitor and the lamp clamped to the right side of the desk, then leaned back in his chair to study its effect. With a frown, he leaned forward to shift the picture back to the other side of the walnut desk. Is having this picture going to rub it in that I've got a battalion command because of who I am? Rennie and the others in my class graduated lieutenants and have lance commands. I'm a commandant and get to oversee a whole battalion. The damnable thing is, I know I can handle this responsibility, provided I get the chance. I want to be treated like everyone else in the Federated Commonwealth's armed forces, but it just ain't going to happen that way. A light knock sounded on his door, pulling Victor back to reality. He quickly twisted the picture so its back was to the door, then straightened his uniform. Enter. A slender, sandy-haired man stepped into the room and snapped Victor a quick salute. Hauptmann Galen Cox reporting, sir. Victor quickly stood, cursing himself for not having done so before Cox entered the room, and returned the salute crisply. He noticed the Hauptmann's restless blue eyes taking in everything, but Cox's face gave no clue to his thoughts. Extending his hand, Victor greeted his visitor warmly. I'm pleased to meet you, Hauptmann Cox. I'm Victor Steiner Davion. Cox met Victor's firm grip and pumped his arm strongly. It was not a contest of strength, but a comradely welcome that pleased Victor. No need to prove himself stronger than me, yet no desire to toady up either. Good. I like that. Victor waved Cox to one of the two yellow leather chairs across from... Red leather, yellow leather. Victor waved Cox to one of the two yellow leather chairs across from his desk, but the Hauptmann demurred. Is there something I can do for you, Hauptmann? Victor asked. On reporting for duty, Commandant. I am your aide. Victor pressed his lips together into a thin line. Hauptmann, don't take this as an insult or any reflection upon you or the impression you've created, but I already told Lieutenant General Hawksworth I don't want an aide. Victor pointed through the open door toward the other commandant offices further down the hall. Just like the others. I'll make do with a clerk. Cox nodded easily, but Victor knew the man had not surrendered. Begging your pardon, sir, but the commandant is not like the others. An accident of birth does not make me different, Hauptmann. I will not have an aide just because I am the Archon's son. Do you understand that? The Hauptmann dipped his blond head again and turned from Victor. For a moment Victor thought he had won, which surprised him, but then he saw Cox close the office door. Victor smiled to himself.
now we're into the trenches. Cox again appraised Victor openly. Permission to speak frankly, Commandant. Victor extended his hands, palms up. Have at it, Mr. Cox. When I said you were not like the others, I was not referring to your lineage. If we assign an officer to every blue blood in the AFFC, we'd double the size of the officer corps and drop its efficiency by an order of magnitude. And, just for your information, Lieutenant General Hawksworth had nothing to do with my being here. He respected your wishes and made them known to the rest of the officers here. Victor leaned forward on his desk. If the General has not assigned you to me, and you're not here because of my bloodlines, what the hell is going on? Cox's grin grew wider. I was selected by the regiment's officers to be your aide. What? Victor sank back down in his chair. Since when did the army become a democracy? Since officers fresh from the academy are given a battalion command. Cox's grin faded as his look became stern. Being out here on the periphery is a joke to people back on Tarkard. Oh, you probably didn't want to be assigned here, which makes you exactly like most of the other officers in this outfit. Most of our lance commanders are fresh from school, just like you, and they're full of that graduation glow. For them, this assignment is a chance to show their potential so they can win a more glamorous assignment like guarding the Draconis border or kicking around some freeworlders. Victor felt his face flush as he recalled how he'd protested his assignment. Cox moved toward the chair Victor had indicated earlier, but stepped behind it and rested his hands on its back. Most lieutenants are easy to straighten out. We get into an engagement with pirates or bandits or a Rasselhag raiding party and step them through the fight. If they don't freeze up or faint at the first exchange, we give them orders and they execute 'em. That first fight is always rough on 'em, and generally rougher on the men and women they command, but they survive it if they listen and do as they are told. It's sort of a military Darwinism in action. Cox met Victor's stare head on. You, on the other hand, have a battalion to command. That puts more than 35 mech warriors in your hands during a battle. There'll be confusion, there'll be chaos. If you can't handle it, people will die. Cox shrugged. People don't want to die, so here I am. Victor found himself sitting with his legs crossed and his arms folded around his chest. And if I issue an order dismissing you as my aide? Cox's grin returned. I think you'll find that order will get lost in the electronic shuffle around here. Looking up, Victor felt himself being infected by Cox's contagious grin. I want to be angry and insulted, but that'll just prove I need the keeper I've been saddled with. I appreciate the regiment's concern, and what's more, I can understand their reluctance to follow an unproven commander into battle. I must earn their respect, so if I want to be treated normally, I guess I have to start now. Victor chewed his lower lip for a moment. So, I'm stuck with you, whether I like it or not. Is that it, Hauptmann? Cox's grin became broader. Then I better like it. Victor stood and thrust his hand forward. Pleased to have you as my aide, Hauptmann Cox. Cox again shook his hand strongly. Glad to be with your Highness. Victor waved off the honorific. This is the AFFC, Hauptmann. Address me by my rank or as Victor. Yes, sir, Commandant. Victor settled back into his chair. How did they happen to select you for my aide, Mr. Cox? He saw a strange spark in Cox's eyes, but the Hauptmann smothered it before Victor could identify it. He could guess, though. This wasn't meant to be your command, was it? My appointment didn't rob you of a battalion command, did it? Cox shrugged nonchalantly. I don't think so, or if it did, it was the best-kept secret on base. I got this position because I volunteered for it. Victor raised an eyebrow. You volunteered to nursemaid me? Why would you do that? Cox stretched out in the chair. Well, when we got the news that you were coming to take over Commander Sykes's battalion, lots of people started grousing. You know how it works. One guy talks to another and he talks to someone else. All of a sudden, what started out as a minor irritation becomes a crisis. It's like the story of the mech warrior who needs to borrow an actuator wrench to make a repair on his battle mech. As he's walking back to the supply depot through a rainstorm, he becomes convinced that the tech won't lend him the wrench. The more he thinks about it, the more worked up he gets. When he finally gets to the depot and finds the tech, he screams, I don't want your damned actuator wrench anyway! Victor chuckled lightly. I don't want your damned actuator wrench anyway. It's been a while since my cousin Morgan Hassek Davion told me that story, but I understand the situation completely. They had me built up into a monster that was going to get them all killed. But only after you transform this unit into a bunch of kiss-ass courtiers waiting on your hand and foot, Cox said with a devilish glint in his eyes. Even as Victor winced, Cox continued. Anyway, I thought that was getting out of hand, so I looked up your school and service file. Scores on exams never stopped a particle beam, but yours looked good enough to deflect a few. I figured if you were going to get a chance to live up to all that potential, someone would have to cut you some slack. He sat up tall. Galen the Knife, that's me. That, Galen Cox, means more to me than you will ever know. Victor smiled and felt, for the first time since entering the Nagel ring, just a bit of the weight on his shoulders had been removed. Thanks, Galen. I'll do all I can to be worthy of your trust. You'll do better than that, Commandant, the blond man said, rising to leave. I've read your file, remember? I hope like hell the rest of us can keep up with you. It occurs to me I can't remember the voice I used for Rennie, so if he comes back into the narrative, I'm going to have no idea what I'm doing. It's fine. He's not. For a while, hopefully. Maybe. We'll see. He's not in this chapter, anyway. Chapter 12. Location unknown. Date unknown. Phelan Kell tried to focus his eyes, but the huge disk of light burning above the table to which he was strapped sent searing photon barrages straight into his brain. The backlight was enough to illuminate some of the people standing around and over him, but he could recall no details nor keep track of how many there were. Doing its sponge-like best to soak up the chemicals being pumped into him, his brain no longer worked right. State your name. The harsh tone of the voice sparked faint recollections, but Phelan's desire to rebel against the command was fleeting. He managed to speak, despite the clumsy thickness of his tongue. Phelan Patrick Kell. Phelan, do you know what your alleged name means? Don't nod. Speak. Tell us what it means and why you have it. My name is Celtic, and it means wolf, or brave as a wolf. Phelan's brow furrowed as he tried to remember what his parents had told him about choosing his name. I was named Phelan for a friend of my parents, and Patrick for my dead uncle. Out of control, he giggled. I am a Kell 'cause I am. A wave of vertigo washed over Phelan. They've juiced me good. I can't let them know what I know. But stringing together even that much of a logical thought burned up his reserve of defiance, leaving him defenseless. Phelan, you have seen service in Rasselhag. How many regiments does Rasselhag have under arms? Include mercenary troops in this total. Oh, it's a new voice. Phelan, you have seen service in Rasselhag. How many elements does Rasselhag have under regiments does Rasselhag have under arms? Include mercenary troops in this total. That new voice expressed a kind of dignified reserve that made Phelan label it as the Confessor. And the other one, that's Hothead. Phelan concentrated, letting his hatred of Tor Miraborg fuel his answer. They have 16 regiments under arms and a few mercenary companies, but those are employed mostly by independent lords. Outrage filled Hothead's voice. Why did you lie about this before? Hothead's fury gave Phelan more pleasure than the drugs flowing into his body. He smiled gleefully. Because fooling you was fun. The confessor's voice cut off Hothead. Phelan, how many regiments does the Draconis Combine have? Sadness welled up inside Phelan, pooling dark and heavy around his heart. I don't know. A soothing note entered the confessor's voice. But you must have an estimate. It must have been discussed during your schooling. Phelan jerked as though a raw nerve had been hit. No schooling. I don't like the academy. Never mind the academy. You do have an idea of the Combine's strength. Yes, I thought you would. Just between us, what do you think it is? Phelan tried to sit up closer to the silhouette he had assigned to the confessor's voice, but the head strap restrained him. Instead, he winked an eye in the voice's direction and dropped his own to a husky whisper. Officially, the Snakes have 100 line units, but they've rebuilt the DCMS mostly in secret, so it's hard to be sure exactly what's going on. My father also said that with the Genyosha and the Ryukin training programs, the Combine's troops have become better. I see. The confessor's tone dropped reflectively. If the Combine's troops are so good, why have they not retaken Rasselhag? The young mech warrior shrugged as best he could. When Rasselhag went independent, Theodore Kurita fought for the Republic against his own renegade troops. Don't ask why. Ask him. Don't know why. Ask him. What about the Lyran Commonwealth? What have they under arms? Phelan squirmed uncomfortably at that question from the confessor. The Commonwealth is my home. I don't know. Phelan heard a new voice coming from outside the circle of light.
Spike's right to the top of the scale, sir. He is blocking.
What does his SPL blood level look like?
In the 75th percentile.
Go to the 80th, but give me a clock so I can keep him there for 15 minutes. So I only keep him there for 15 minutes. The urgency and command in the confessor's voice drained away as he again addressed himself to his prisoner. Phelan, we are all friends here. You can trust me. How many regiments does the Lyran Commonwealth maintain? Phelan felt as though he'd been reduced to the size of a micron, then tossed to the winds. The corded wristlet felt like a diamond saw against his flesh. He saw the ribbons that had once been his legs twist together and twist until they knotted up and pain burned in his thighs. Then his neck elongated and his head plunged back down past his feet, hurtling ever faster toward the ground. When it hit, he felt like it would splatter like an overripe fruit. The confessor snapped a command. Back SPL off to the 77th percentile. He has no resistance, no chemo immunity developed in him. He has a strong will, nothing more. Someone snapped his fingers. The sound was like a gunshot to Phelan's senses, but Hothead's voice quickly overrode it. Tell me, Phelan, what happened to you at the Nagel Ring? Phelan's resistance crystallized instantly. No!
Freebirth! Cursed the man tending the interrogation monitors.
Freebirth!
Cursed the man tending the interrogation monitors.
What? Are you getting Spike scaling up again?
I wish. A series of clicks came from the equipment. Neg, not a technical problem. I'm getting full cycles off the scale here, not just spikes. He reacts as strongly to that question as someone does when forced out of their Sibco.
Phelan latched onto the word Sibco. I know I've heard that before. What? Where? When? Who am I? The confessor's voice helped him refocus himself. The Free Worlds League has troops. How many regiments does it have? Phelan closed his eyes. 70, probably. And Durian lost most of their units when they seceded in the war with the Capellan Confederation, and then when Thomas Marek took them back into the League. Marek still has to keep troops there to keep the peace. And the Federated Sons, how many regiments do they have? Phelan frowned. The Federated Sons and the Lyran Commonwealth have integrated their commands. They want to know about my home.
Resistance building, sir. He has linked the Suns with the Lyran Commonwealth. The confessor's voice rasped quietly, sounding to Phelan like a knife being drawn from a sheath. If you cannot tell me about the Federated Sons, we will have to know about the Nagel Ring. No, 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 no. Words falling meaninglessly from his lips, Phelan's consciousness ricocheted around in his skull. No, 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 not that. Shame burned on his cheeks, then his anger broke like a fever, and tears rolled from his eyes. The Federated Sons is too big to hurt. The AFFS has 103 regiments.
He is still resisting. Disappointment echoed through the confessor's voice. 103 regiments and... Phelan tried to hold his answer in, but cracks had developed in the dam he'd tried to build up. The Davion and Steiner militaries have been merged into one, and the whole thing is called the Armed Forces of the Federated Commonwealth. Very good, Phelan. Someone patted his leg reassuringly. Keep up the cooperation, and we can end this soon. How many regiments does the LCAF have? The mercenary's whole body tensed. He tried to withhold the information, but a voice inside his head whispered seductive arguments that gnawed away at his resolve.
What have the Lyrans ever done for you, Phelan? They humiliated you and cast you out of the Nagel Ring. They murdered DJ with their stupidity. Think of all the times you vowed you would avenge her if you had the Force. You don't have it, but they do. All you have to do is tell them what they want to know, and your shame will be absolved.
Yes, the voice in his head is someone else entirely. It's fine. Totally normal behavior. Phelan felt as if a million fire ants were marching over his body, feasting as they went. That's bad. He searched his brain for the information on the Lyran Commonwealth's troop strengths, but instead he ran headlong into reasons why he could not give the Commonwealth up. My father and mother are fanatical in their devotion to the Steiner family. Victor Steiner Davion is my cousin. To betray the Commonwealth is to betray them, to betray everyone I love. I cannot. The confessor's voice gained an edge. Take him up to 80 and back down again immediately. The mercenary heard the menace in those words and tried to brace himself for the drug's effect, but he could never have anticipated it. He felt a tremor begin at his feet and knew that a wave had begun in the kilometers of ribbon that made them up. Moving up beyond his knees, it built in intensity and coursed through his thighs. He saw his whole body flapping in a technicolor wind. As the power of the wave increased almost beyond endurance, it suddenly broke like a mighty explosion in his brain. Over Phelan's scream of agony, the confessor repeated the question. How many regiments does the Lyran Commonwealth have? Phelan fought to resist, but the words had already reached his throat and tongue. 153 regiments. The 65 coming from Sky and Tamar are questionable in loyalty because the Archon has forbidden them to try to take back former Tamar Pact worlds from Russell. His body quivered, and sobs racked his chest, but nothing could free him from his bonds or his tormentors. Hothead's evil chuckle underscored and mocked the confessor's strong voice. Very good, Phelan. Now we will start again, from the beginning, and make sure everything tallies. Work with us, and we will not have to hurt you again. So, a tendency this book has, as you're probably noticing, is it sort of overshares details in lots of ways. Usually, this is done through internal monologue. It's I'm noticing this as that and whatever was going on last week with the people caring a lot about their collars and sleeves. It's like you're just throwing in words. There's got to be a more artful way to do this. But it's okay. It's fun. It's pulpy fun. Okay? We're enjoying ourselves. I'm having fun. Chapter 13 Scandia. Federation of Sky, Lyran Commonwealth. 31 December 3049. Drenched in sweat, Kai Allard rested his hands on his hips and raised his face to the sky.
These hills really make me wonder about my commitment to running.
He laughed to himself.
On Scandia, running isn't a commitment, it's a sentence.
He snaked his hands under the hem of his red t-shirt, raising it to wipe his face. When he pulled the shirt back down again, he saw her for the first time.
I just lost track of where I was. There we go. Her black hair barely brushed the shoulders of the oversized gray sweatshirt she wore. The black and green bodysuit underneath hugged her long, well-muscled legs, the design's green elements swirling up her limbs like long blades of grass. With her right heel resting on a park bench, she leaned over and grasped the toe of her right shoe and pulled herself forward to touch her nose to her kneecap. As she unfolded, she caught sight of Kai watching her and seemed to become self-conscious. Though she smiled, her blue eyes were wary as a cat's. She brought her arms close to her chest, obscuring the New Avalon Institute of Science crest on the sweatshirt, and began to perform waist twists. "Hello." "Sorry to startle you," Kai said. "I'd not expected to see anyone else here this early in the morning." He glanced out over the misty green valley where he'd just run. "They've got a beautiful exercise course set up here, but you couldn't tell that from the number of people using it." He took a half step forward and saw her drift back easily. He pointed at the tan canvas bag near her end of the bench. "Could you toss the bag to me? I'd like my towel." Her reserve broke as she lofted the bag to Kai. "How well did you do?" Kai frowned. "Pardon?" She smiled, and Kai instantly decided he liked that very much. "Your shirt is from the 25th New Avalon Mir... Wah, ma, hoobadoo hoo. Um... Your shirt is from the 25th New Avalon Myriameter run. How well did you do?" Kai pulled a white towel from his bag and mopped his face. "I finished in the 50s." She lifted her other leg to the bench and began to stretch. "Was that place or time?" Her question came without challenge or skepticism, and that pleased Kai. "She's not yet decided if I am a liar or a fellow runner whom she can trust. A place. My time was 43:35. I should have done better, but I died late in the race." She laughed easily. "Heartbreak Hill." Kai matched her laugh with his own. "You know it? I mean, you've run in the race?" Her black hair whipped back and forth as she shook her head. "No, not the race, just the course. I'm not much for competition." She straightened up. "That hill is a killer. It may only be a kilometer and a half through the Davion Peace Park to the finish line, but it might as well be a light year after that hill." Kai hung his towel around his neck and raised one of his legs to the bench. A droplet of sweat rolled off his nose as he bent forward to stretch out his hamstring. "You're right. The hill is death itself. Still, running through the park, I got a lift from the Silver Eagle Memorial." "How's that?" She shuddered visibly. "That statue is so horrible. That dog's all torn up and obviously in pain. Just as obviously the panther is going to kill it. I found it depressing." Her face screwed itself tight with distaste. "It's so violent, I don't see why it's in the Peace Park." Kai shifted legs and bent forward until the muscle in the back of his other thigh almost screamed. "I remember when my Uncle Dan took me to the park and explained how the dog represented the Kell hounds rescuing Melissa Steiner from a corrida trap. Patrick Kell sacrificed himself to make sure his cousin Melissa could escape. The statue, sir, deserves to be in the Peace Park because people need to remember that great sacrifice is necessary for great gain." Kai looked over at her. "I understand your point, but I differ with it. I think the child the hound is protecting, and the rope rising into the sky symbolizing the child's imminent rescue, makes it a hopeful display." He refrained from bragging about his family's connection with the statue. "In the race, I felt as torn up as the dog looks, but I pushed myself because I knew it wouldn't kill me, and because I owed myself the best finish I could muster." "And I see your point." She stripped off the sweatshirt, revealing the bodysuit's clinging tank top. The muscles in her bare arms were well defined, and her flat stomach and smallish breasts marked her as a dedicated runner. She tossed the garment down on the bench. "Is it safe here?" Shifting around, Kai leaned into the bench to stretch out his Achilles tendon and the muscles of his right calf.
"Do you mean for you or for the shirt?"
She gave him a half grin.
"The shirt. I may be just off the dropship, but I can take care of myself."
Kai chuckled lightly. The shirt should be fine. Scandia's criminal element would consider it beneath them. Since this world's penal colony is located on that silvery moon over there, and the ambient temperature is 0 degrees centigrade, they go for the big stuff. An NAIS sweatshirt isn't worth it. She followed his line of sight to a small silver ball hovering between two jagged mountain peaks near the horizon. Escaping from there requires more than carving a laser pistol from a block of sodium tallowate. Okay. Sorry. Ahem. Escaping from there requires more than carving a laser pistol from a block of sodium tallowate. She turned back to Kai. What do they call it? Kai met her gaze squarely. The Crims call it the Last Mistress, but the locals just call it Justice. She frowned. That's cold. Kai laughed. No pun intended. She shook her head emphatically. No, no pun. She watched him for a moment, then nodded approvingly. Not many people stretch out like they should after exercise. It's a good thing you're doing. It's a good thing you're doing. He nodded. I don't want to be a tightened up old man. She frowned sympathetically. Is there a family tendency toward that sort of thing? I mean, how are your grandfathers? Kai kept the smile on his face, but his mind was racing over his nearest ancestors. Grandpa Allard is fine. I know it's a common story that he has a rare, untreatable form of Alzheimer's disease, but that's so no one will try to kidnap him and pump information out of him. His years in the Ministry of Intelligence Information and Operations would make him a valuable resource to enemy intelligence agencies. But my mother's father, he was nuts for years before he finally died. After hearing all the things he did and seeing what Romano Lau, I still can't warm to the idea of her as my aunt, has done to bedevil my mother, I can only hope I take after the Allard side of the family. That's all internal monologue. Expository monologue. One is dead, but neither had real problems. I just don't want to leave anything up to chance. He wiped his face again with the towel, then stuffed it into his bag. Well, enjoy your run. 5 clicks out, you'll hit a downhill stretch that looks inviting, but save something. Beyond it is a slope that makes Heartbreak Hill look like a speed bump. Suspicion crept into her voice. And after that? The hill's big brother. Thanks for the warning. She tossed back over her shoulder. Oh, thanks for the warning. She tossed back over her shoulder as she headed off along the running trail. Kai watched until her head sank out of sight, then smacked the palm of his right hand against his forehead. Idiot. She said she was just off a drop ship. She's probably not had time to make many friends, and you don't have a date for the marshal's reception tonight. He glanced at her crumpled T-shirt and wished he had a pencil and paper to leave a message with it. Slightly angry with himself, Kai started back up the road to the military compound and the small house he shared with another lieutenant in the guards. He stopped at the crest of the hill and searched vainly for a view of her. Then he abandoned his vantage point and retreated home, silently berating himself for not even getting her name. And of course, there's some bot on the Twitch that's trying to get me to go to some website. And that's not bloody happening. I'm not bloody doing it. I don't have the patience. No doctor I, eh? Ahem. Bevan Pelosi. Okay. Blake's blood, Kai! Dressed only in a towel wrapped around his narrow waist, Bevan Pelosi pounded his fist against the door jamb. Steam still drifted from the shower stall beyond him, but his deep voice suffered no competition from the faucet's constant dripping. How could you let such a woman get away? Kai shot his toe-headed T-O-W-headed housemate a daggered glance. This is me we're talking about, Bevan, not you. I do not have your vast experience with women. Give me an opportunity and I just screw it up. Bevan's hair hung in wet ringlets over his forehead, but did not hide his frown.
I was thinking about this girl in the shower.
Hence the smile on your face, Kai quipped, and the flush of your skin. Wise guy.
Bevan made a face. Why the hell didn't you just come back here and write a note, then drive back down to the park and leave it? You could have used my air car. You know where I keep the keys.
Kai turned from the mirror and raised an eyebrow. My dear friend, I actually thought of that this morning. Kai glanced at a waste receptacle by his desk. I would have done exactly as you suggest, except that your guest from last evening had already taken the keys, so she could go out and buy all those things she put on into that omelet this morning.
Bevan shrugged helplessly. And don't think I don't appreciate your helping me eat that thing. He slapped a hand against his flat stomach. Why is it that women want to fatten me up?
They probably want to slow you down long enough to catch you.
Pelosi's grin blossomed like a sunflower. So many women, so little time. Kai turned back to the mirror.
So many women, so little nerve. He tugged at the collar of his green dress uniform and hooked it shut. Is it fixed right, Bevan?
Pelosi closed his left eye, then nodded. Don't change the subject, Kai. How long has it been since you've had a date?
You mean aside from the time I went out with Pamela's cousin so you could be alone with Pam?
Bevan ignored the needling and stared wistfully into space. Pam. Now there was a girl who really knew how to
Cook,
Kai offered wryly. He moved back from the mirror and sat on the edge of his bed. Flipping open a rosewood case, he pulled one of the silver spurs from their bed of ruby velvet. The spur was a simple U shape with a rowelless spike at the lowest point in the loop.
At least Pam didn't insist on putting Quillar in an omelet, he commented as he fastened the spur to the heel of his left boot with a black leather strap.
Leaning against the door jamb, Bevan wrinkled his nose. This from a man buckling spurs to his boots.
Kai ignored the jibe. Why'd you stop seeing her?
Bevan shrugged. I don't know. She just started grating on me. I think she liked you more than me, anyway.
Not surprising.
Kai tucked his trousers into the tops of his black boots.
I paid more attention to her than you did.
Yeah, I felt pretty embarrassed when you got her that holovid for her birthday, and I'd forgotten clean about it. Bevan shook his head. Wondered why you didn't ask her out after we broke up. I wouldn't have minded.
Kai stood and checked himself in the mirror. It wouldn't have worked, your permission or otherwise.
Kai stared into the mirror, but saw only a long line of footprints along a black sandy beach. As though reading Kai's mind, Bevan smiled sympathetically. Hey, I know your thing with... what was her name?
Kai's face remained impassive and his eyes distant. Wendy. Wendy Sylvester.
Bevan looked down apologetically. Yeah, Wendy, right. Well, I know how that ended, and you got that, and that you blame yourself and all, but you can't let it ruin your life. You gotta start living sometime. This girl today, she could have been an omen.
Kai shrugged. If she was an omen, I already missed.
Bevan opened his arms expansively, lifting his palms to the heavens. There are plenty of fish in the sea, Kai. You're an eligible officer who also happens to have enough noble blood coursing through his veins to get him invited to the marshal's reception while us po folks have to fend for ourselves on this New Year's Eve. There are women in the thousands who'd like to be seen on your arm or in your bed if you just give it a chance. Before Kai could respond, Bevan cut him off. I know what you're going to say, but bottom line is this, Kai. You just have to open up and give yourself a chance. Hell, today's the day.
Give yourself a chance.
Somewhere deep inside that phrase struck a chord in Kai.
Why spend your life avoiding things because you know they'll turn out badly? You know you got along with Pam because she was with Bevan, which meant there was no pressure on you. You couldn't screw that up. Give yourself a chance. So resolved. As of January 1, 3050, Kai Allard will give himself a chance.
As he offered his hand to Bevan, a whisper of dread passed through him.
Let's hope the gods of retribution do not notice your boldness. If they do, You will reap what your temerity richly deserves. Yes, sir. I think it was 3 years ago we last saw each other. Kai smiled as he took Lieutenant General Andrew Redburn's hand and shook it. As I recall, it was at the anniversary party for my Aunt Reva and Uncle Robert. I enjoyed getting to see both you and Misha. He looked around. Is she here? Andrew shook his head. No, but she sends her love. She asked me to thank you for that kind hologram concerning her last book. Andrew Redburn's deep voice.
But she sends her love. She asked me to thank you for that kind hologram concerning her last book.
There we go. Andrew Redburn's deep voice and ready smile reminded Kai of when the Lieutenant General, then just a major with the 1st Cathal Uhlans, had brought his family to Kestrel for Dan Allard's wedding. He'd made it his duty to ride herd on all the children present to keep them from getting underfoot during the preparations. Kai remembered fondly more than one colossal wrestling match where Victor Davion, Phelan Kell, Andrew's son Telos, T.H., Thelos, and he had been wolves to Andrew's bear, complete with roars and growls and playful swats on all sides. I meant every word, Kai said. She and Jay Mitchell are the only historians around who have any sense for accurate battle reportage. Freedom's bloody price really brought to life Rasselhaig's battle against the renegade Kurita forces during the Ronin Wars. The tactical descriptions of the battles read logically, and her judgment of the Gunsberg debacle placed the blame where it belongs, on the mercenaries and the politicians equally. I very much enjoyed the book and felt I had to tell her so. Andrew smiled, and light glinted from the medals and campaign ribbons on the broad black breast of his Uhlans uniform.
Your message arrived right after the book had been damned in the review, so your comments were most welcome.
Then I'm doubly glad I wrote to her. I just hope Misha is the one to chronicle any battles where I find myself. I know the victors write the history, but having a sympathetic historian in your corner can't hurt at all. Excuse me? Kai felt a jolt as he heard her voice and felt a tap on his shoulder. He turned from Andrew and stared straight into the deep blue eyes of the woman he'd met that morning. Maybe Bevan was right. Maybe she is an omen. She wore a black evening gown whose bodice was sewn with ebon sequins in a starburst pattern that flashed with the lights as she moved. The string of pearls around her throat matched her earrings and had enough of a blue tint to complement her eyes and dark hair. You forgot your bag, she said with an impish smile. What? Was all Kai could think of to say. She laid her hand on his arm. Your bag, the one with your towel in it? You left it on the bench. I waited after my run, thinking you might come back for it. There was nothing with your name, so I couldn't call you. I took it home and planned to get out onto the trail early enough tomorrow to get it back to you. Kai felt his cheeks flushing and turned back to Andrew just in time to see a bemused smile spread over his face. We met this morning, General, out running. I would introduce you, but I... Andrew winked at the woman.
No need. Dr. Lear came in with us yesterday. She's been transferred to the 10th Lyran Guards, and I met her on the way to Skundia. It's good to see you again, Doctor.
She nodded her head. And you, General?
Andrew glanced at Kai. Allow me to perform introductions. Lieutenant, this is Dr. Deirdre Lear.
Kai took her hand and raised it to his lips. Most pleased to make your acquaintance formally.
And Dr. Lear, this is Lieutenant Kai Allard Lau.
Her smile froze, then dissolved into a thin, colorless gash in her face. She blinked once or twice as though searching for words that would not come. She clawed at the back of her right hand, raking nails across where Kai had kissed her, then turned abruptly and vanished into the crowd. Kai's jaw dropped open, and concern puckered Andrew's brow. Both men looked at each other, then looked away like friends who had both seen a ghost, but would not admit it to the other.
Hair rising on the back of his neck, Kai tried to see if he could catch any glimpse of her retreating form, but the milling crowd had swallowed her whole. Kai rubbed his right hand over the back of his neck.
I wonder what that was all about.
Andrew shook his head slowly.
I have no idea. I do know she became a doctor because her father was a mech warrior who died in battle when she was only a child. She's not much on violence, though she did mention having a black belt in Aikido.
Kai nodded.
That doesn't surprise me. Aikido teaches one to use his opponent's energy against him. It is the ultimate in nonviolent self-protection. You don't hurt your foe. He hurts himself.
Perhaps she didn't realize you were a mech warrior,
Andrew suggested.
but then she would have known that from your uniform. Maybe it's that she has no fondness for nobles. It's not unheard of.
Kai chewed his lower lip.
Perhaps. Whatever it is, she was hurt, and hurt bad. Isn't it enough that I have to live up to my family's reputation? Now I have to work against something that someone else did. What good is it to give myself a chance if it's just going to blow up in my face?
The next morning, Kai found his bag on the bench, but Deirdre was nowhere in sight. He searched the bag for a note or some other sign from her, but found nothing. He slumped down on the bench.
If Bevan was right and she is an omen, 3050 is going to be a very bad year.
Foreshadowing for the existence of the inner sphere? I wonder. I think that's where we'll leave it for today. Yeah, because the next chapter is kind of longish. Yeah, that's what we'll do. That's what we'll do. That gives us a good solid chunk for next week. Nothing too crazy. Yeah, that is what we'll do. Anyway, we move right along. I very much have to actively repair the cover because the front cover just popped off earlier today before we started reading. So I've got to fix that. I'll figure that out. Let's see. So far, I don't think there's anything unfortunate happening schedule-wise. So Wednesday and Friday should still be a lock, as will next Monday, so far as I know. So this Wednesday we'll be reading the penultimate installment of Down Below Station, the second to last installment of Down Below Station. The week after that we'll finish it. And this Friday we will be reading some fairy tales in Death's End by Cixin Liu. So that will about do it for today. Thanks to everyone who tuned in. A bit of a shorter one this week. Getting back onto Hoth. Sort of. Not really. Didn't really take a break. Not a break I wanted to take, anyway. Anyway, anything else? Nope, nothing I can think of. Boop boop be doo. I thought I had something else significant to impart, but I can't remember what it is. Doesn't matter. Anyway, until next time, stay safe, stay sane, be decent to each other, and, yeah, toodaloo. We'll see you all next time.
Bye-bye.